What's up, everybody? Hope you had a wonderful Christmas and holiday season as we get ready to wrap up 2023. For today's episode, I'm going to do something a little bit different as a bonus and give you a preview of something very cool I got to be a part of with the live podcast show. So Greg and Scott of the live podcast show and many other things in the Disney realm invited me and several of their family and friends on to do a live old-time radio reading of Charles Dickens' A Christmas Carol. It was a lot of fun. We had a lot of laughs, and it turned out amazingly because Greg is one heck of a audio producer. So right now you'll hear about the first 30 minutes, but if you want to hear the full thing, including my reading as the Ghost of Christmas Present, as well as narrator number 5, you'll have to go out to your favorite podcast feed, search for the live podcast show, and go ahead and take a listen. I hope you enjoy A Christmas Carol.
There it stood, a sign above the counting house door, Scrooge and Marley. Scrooge never painted out old Marley's name after his death. Sometimes people new to the business called Scrooge by his name, sometimes Marley, but he answered to both names. It was all the same to him. Scrooge was hard and sharp at first, self-contained and solitary as an oyster. The cold within him froze his features, stiffened his gait, and permeated his voice. His coldness permeated everything about him and followed him everywhere he went. Scrooge's office was frigid in the winter, and he didn't warm it a single degree at Christmas. External heat and cold had little influence on Scrooge. No warmth could warm, nor wintry weather chill him. The heaviest rain, snow, hail, and sleet could boast of only one advantage over him. It often came down handsomely, and as Scrooge never did. Nobody ever stopped him in the street to say, "My dear Scrooge, how are you? When will you join me for dinner?" No beggars dared ask him to bestow a trifle. Children did not ask, "Please, sir, do you know what time it is?" Even the blind man's dogs seemed to know better than to approach him, and when they saw Scrooge coming, they would tug their owners out of the way. Once upon a time, on Christmas Eve of all days, Scrooge was hard at work in his counting house. It was cold, bleak, an unusually dim winter day. The clocks had only just struck 3, but it was already quite dark outside. Candles were flickering merrily in the windows of the neighboring offices. The door of Scrooge's office was open to ensure that he could keep an eye on his clerk, Bob Cratchit, who sat in the dismal little desk, working diligently. Scrooge had a meager fire for himself, but the clerk's fire was so small that it looked like a single lit coal. But the clerk could not replenish it, for Scrooge kept the coal box by his side. When Cratchit glanced at the small fire with a glint of hope in his eye, Scrooge scowled at his clerk. The clerk shivered, pulled close his comforter, and tried to warm himself at the candle. Suddenly, the door of the counting house blew open.
A Merry Christmas, Uncle. God save you.
Bah, humbug.
Christmas a humbug, Uncle. You don't mean that, I am sure.
I do. Merry Christmas. What right have you to be merry? What reason have you to be merry? You're poor enough.
Come then, what right have you to be dismal? What reason have you to be morose? You're rich enough.
Bah, humbug.
Don't be cross, Uncle.
What else can I be when I live in such a world of fools? Merry Christmas. Out upon Merry Christmas. What Christmas time to you but a time for paying bills without money? A time for finding yourself a year older, but not an hour richer. If I could work my will, every idiot who goes on about a Merry Christmas would be roasted with his own goose and buried with a stake of holly through his heart.
Uncle!
Niece, keep Christmas in your own way and let me keep it in mine.
Keep it, but you don't keep it.
Let me keep it in my custom then. Much good may it do you, much good it has ever done you.
There are many things from which I might have derived good by which I have not profited, I dare say. Christmas amongst the rest. I am sure I have always thought of Christmas time when it has come around as a good time, a kind, forgiving, charitable, pleasant time, the only time I know of in and to think of other people, people below them in means, but equal in them in dignity. Dignity, no diggity, no doubt. The only time I know of in a long calendar year when men and women seem willing to open their shut up hearts freely, equals in their right to dignity and joy and celebration of life. And therefore, Uncle, though it has to do me good, I also say, God bless it.
God bless you, each and every one.
One more sound from you and you'll be celebrating Christmas at the soup kitchen.
Please don't be angry, Uncle. Come dine with us tomorrow.
I suggest you share your Christmas sermon with all your other sentimental folk that wind up in Bedlam, where they belong.
But why?
Why did you get married?
Because I fell in love?
Because you fell in love. Good afternoon.
Uncle, you never came to see me before that happened. Why give it a reason for not coming now?
Good afternoon.
I want nothing from you. I ask nothing of you. Why cannot we be friends?
Good afternoon.
I am sorry with all my heart to find you so resolute. We have never had any quarrel, and I am aware of. But I have come to you in honor of the holiday, and I'll keep my Christmas humor to the last. So a Merry Christmas, Uncle, and a Happy New Year. And to you as well, Mr. Cratchit.
Thank you kindly, ma'am.
On making his exit, Scrooge's nephew had let two other people in. They were alms collectors, pleasant to behold. They stood in Scrooge's office, and they had books and papers in their hands, and bowed their heads as they stood before him.
Scrooge and Marley's, I believe. Have I the pleasure of addressing Mr. Scrooge and Mr. Marley?
Mr. Marley has been dead for 7 years. He died 7 years ago this very night.
We have no doubt his liberality is well represented by his surviving partner.
It is more than usually desirable that we set aside provisions for the poor and destitute, who suffers greatly at the present time. Many thousands are in want of necessities. Hundreds of thousands are in want of common comforts, sir.
Are there no prisons?
There are plenty of prisoners.
Excellent. I was afraid from what you said at first that something had occurred to stop them in their useful course. I'm very glad to hear that.
They scarcely bring Christmas cheer of mind or body to the destitute. In light of that, few of us are endeavoring to procure the poor some food and drink and means of warmth. We choose this time more so than any other time when want is keenly felt and abundance rejoices.
What shall I put you down for?
Nothing.
You wish to be anonymous?
I wish to be left alone. Since you asked me what I wish, that is my answer. I don't make merry myself at Christmas, and I can't afford to make idle people merry. I pay my share of taxes and support prisons, the workhouses, and the like. They cost enough, and those who are badly off must go there.
Many can't go there. Many would rather die.
If they would rather die, they had better do it and decrease the surplus of population. If your business is concluded, I suggest you make an exit. Good afternoon.
Unrest ye merry gentlemen, let nothing you dismay.
Silence! Silence, I say!
At length, the hour of shutting up the counting house had arrived.
You'll want all day tomorrow, I suppose?
If quite convenient, sir.
It's not convenient, it's not fair. Why should I lose a day's wages while you receive a day's wages without a day work?
If you would be so kind, Mr. Scrooge. After all, it's only once a year, and my wife and children cherish it so.
A poor excuse for picking a man's pocket every 25th of December, but I suppose you must have the whole day. Be here all the earlier the next morning.
I will, sir. I promise you. And a very Merry Christmas and a Happy New Year to you and yours.
Bah, humbug.
Scrooge, having no reason to stay at the counting house, went to his quiet quarters. He lived in chambers which had once belonged to his deceased partner, His home was dreary and dismal enough, for no one lived in it but Scrooge. Now, it is fact that was nothing at all exceptional about the knocker on the door to Scrooge's home, except that it was very large. It was also a fact that Scrooge had seen it night and morning during his whole residence in that place. But it also be said that Scrooge had not spared one thought on Jacob Marley, since he had mentioned his partner's death early that very afternoon. And then, let any man explain to me, if he can, how it happened that Scrooge, having left his key in the lock of the door, looked at the knocker and saw not a knocker, but Jacob Marley's face. Startled, Scrooge sought to take a closer look, but as he received from his shock, the knocker appeared to be simply a knocker once more. To say that he was not startled or that his heart was not beating hard would be untrue. But Scrooge put his hand upon the doorknob regardless, turned it sturdily, walked in, lit the candle, and closed the door with a bang. Scrooge was not the sort of man to be frightened by echoes, but the sight of Jacob Marley's face was burned into his mind's eye and made him uneasy. He fastened the door and walked across the hall and up the stairs more cautiously than usual before he shut the door to his bedroom. Scrooge glanced about the hallway to ensure that everything appeared as it always had. He had just enough recollection of his face to feel the need to survey the room. Satisfied that all was in the usual state, he closed his bedroom door and locked himself in. Double locked himself, in fact, which was not very custom. Confident that he was safe and sound, he took off his cravat, dressed for bed, and sat down before the fire. It was a low fire indeed, a trifle, one would say, on a bitter night. Still, it was warm and warded off the darkness and the cold.
Humbug.
As the humbug left his mouth, Scrooge became aware of the soft ringing of a bell. It was with great astonishment and with strange, inexplicably dread, we're just going with that he stood up and looked to find the source of the sound. He heard the bell begin to ring louder and louder, and slowly but surely more and more bells joined the otherworld choir. Soon the room was flooded with sounds and loud cacophonous bells. Suddenly the bells ceased as they had begun. Together, they were succeeded by a clanking noise as if some person were dragging a heavy chain across a stone floor. Scrooge then remembered once hearing that ghosts had haunted houses were often described as dragging chains.
It's humbug still. I won't believe it.
His skin grew pale through when, without a pause, it came through a bedroom door and entered into the room before his eyes. The dying flame in the fireplace leaped up as if it were to exclaim, "I know him! That is Marley's ghost!" and died, leaving the room dark, except for the faint, eerie light emanating from the specter. The chain it drew was clasped about his middle. It was long and wound about him. It was made of cash boxes, keys, padlocks, ledgers, deeds, and heavy purses, wrought in steel. His body was transparent, so that Scrooge, observing him, could see the smoldering wood in the fireplace.
Who are you?
Ask me who I was.
Who were you then? You're particular for a shade.
In life, I was your partner, Jacob Marley.
Can you sit down?
I can.
Scrooge asked the question because he didn't know whether a ghost might find itself able to sit in a chair. But the ghost sat down on the opposite side of the fireplace as if he were quite used to it.
You don't believe in me?
I don't.
What reason do you have to doubt your senses?
I don't know.
Why do you doubt your senses?
Because a little thing affects them. Perhaps I'm having a bad dream. Perhaps you are the product of a bad meal. You may be the product of an undigested bit of beef, a crumb of bad cheese, a fragment of an underdone potato. That's more of the gravy than a grave about you, whatever you are.
Scrooge was not in the habit of cracking jokes, nor did he feel in his heart by any means comical at the moment. The truth is that he tried to be smart as the means of distracting himself and keeping his terror at bay, for the specter's voice disturbed the very marrow of his bones. At his mockery, the spirit raised a frightful cry and shook his change with such a dismal, appalling noise that Scrooge held on tight to his chair to save himself from falling to the ground in fear.
Mercy, I beg thee, dreadful apparition, why do you trouble me?
Man of worldly mind, do you believe in me or not?
I do, I must, but why do spirits walk the earth, and why do they come to me?
It is required of every man that the spirit within him should walk among his fellow men and travel far and wide, and in that spirit goes no forth in life. It is condemned to do so after life. It is doomed to wander through the world and witness what it cannot share, but might have shared on earth, and turned to happiness. Oh, woe is me.
You are wrapped in chains. Will you tell me why?
I wear the chains I forgot in life. I gird it on my own will, and of my own free will I wore it. Do you know the weight and length of the strong coil you bear yourself? Yours was full and as heavy and as long as this. 7 Christmas Eves ago, you had labored on it. Since yours is a tremendous chain.
Scrooge glanced about on him on the floor, expecting to find himself surrounded by the 50 or 60 fat horns of iron cable, but he could see nothing.
Oh, Jacob Marley, I don't understand. Have you anything comforting to tell me?
I have no comfort to give, Ebenezer Scrooge. I cannot rest. I cannot stay. I cannot linger anywhere. My spirit never left our counting house. Mark me. In life, my spirit never roved beyond the narrow limits of our money-changing hole, and weary journey lie before me till the end of eternity.
You must have been very slow about it, Jacob.
Slow?
7 years dead and traveling all the time?
The whole time, no rest, no peace, torture or remorse.
You travel fast.
On the wings of the wind.
You may have got over a great quantity of ground in 7 years.
The ghost, on hearing this, set up another cry and clanked its chain hideously in the dead silence of the night.
Capture, bond, and double ironed, not to know the age of innocent labor by immortal creatures, for the earth must pass into eternity before the good of which its suspectable is all developed. Not to know that any Christian spirit working kindly in its little sphere, whatever it may be, will find its mortal life too short for its vast means of usefulness. Not to know that no space of regret can make amends for one's life opportunity misused. Yet such was I. Oh, such was I.
But you were always a good man of business, Jacob.
Business? Mankind was my business. The common welfare was my business. Charity, mercy, forebodings, and what?
Forbearance and benevolence.
Leave that in, that's funny. Mankind was my business. The common welfare of my business. Charity, mercy, forbearance, forebodings were all my business. The dealings of my trade were a drop of water in the comprehensive ocean of my business.
The ghost held up his chain at arm's length, as if that were the cause of the The ghost held up its chains at arm's length, as if that were the cause of all this unavailing grief, and flung it heavily upon the ground.
At this time of my rolling year, I suffer most. Why do I walk through crowds of fellow beings with my eyes turned down, and never raise them to the blessed star which led the wise men to a poor door? Were there no poor homes to which its light would have conceived me? Were there no poor homes to which its lights would have conducted me?
That's different. Not defeat. That's just weird.
Scrooge was deeply disturbed by the ghost words and began to tremble.
Hear me. My time is nearly gone.
I will. Don't be vague, Jacob. Please.
How is it that I appear before you in a shape that you can see? I may not tell. I have sat invisible behind you many and many a day.
It was not an agreeable idea. Scrooge shivered and wiped the cold perspiration from his brow.
There is no light part of my presence. I am here tonight to warn you that you have yet to change, that you have yet a chance and a hope of escaping my fate, a chance and hope of procuring Ebenezer.
You were always a good friend to me. Thank you.
You will be haunted by 3 spirits.
Scrooge could feel his heart beating rapidly in his chest.
Is that the chance and hope you mentioned, Jacob?
It is.
I think I'd rather not.
Without their visits, you cannot hope to shun the path I tread. Expect the first when the clock strikes midnight. The second when the church bell's song has ended, and the last when faith is lost. For your own sake, remember what has passed between us.
Couldn't I take them all at once and have it over with, Jacob?
The apparition walked backward, and at every step it took, the window raised itself a little so that when the specter reached it, it was wide open. It beckoned Scrooge to approach, which he did. When they were within 2 paces of each other, Marley's ghost held up its hand, warning him to come no nearer. Scrooge stopped. Scrooge became aware of confused noises in the air, heart-rending sounds of lamentations and regret, wailing, unexpressibly sorrowful and accusatory. The specter, after listening for a moment, joined in the mournful dirge. Floated out into the bleak, dark night. Scrooge approached the window, desperately in his curiosity. The air was filled with phantoms, wandering hither and thither in restless haste, and moaning as they went. Every one of them were chained like Marley's ghost. Some few were linked together, but none were free. The source of their misery was clear. They sought to interfere for good in human matters and had lost the power forever. Whether these specters faded into the evening mist or the evening mist enshrouded them, Scrooge could not tell. But the specters and their voices faded, and the night became as still and silent as it had been as he had walked home. Scrooge closed the window and examined the door by which the ghost had entered. It was double locked and the bolts were undisturbed. He tried to say humbug, but found himself speechless. And being from the emotion he had undergone, or the fatigue of the day, or the glimpse of the invisible world, or the conversation of the ghost, or the lateness of the hour, much in need of a response. He went straight to bed and fell asleep upon the instant.
And all the bells on earth shall ring on Christmas Day, on Christmas Day. And all the bells on earth shall ring on Christmas Day in the morning. And And all the angels in heaven shall sing on Christmas Day, on Christmas Day. And all the angels in heaven shall sing on Christmas Day in the morning.
I hope you enjoyed this preview of our old-timey radio reading of A Christmas Carol. Again, if you want to hear the full thing, as well as my two parts as the Ghost of Christmas Present and narrator number 5, you have to go out to your favorite podcast feed and search for the live podcast show to take a listen. And while you're there, you might as well hit subscribe because it is a really, really good show that Greg, Scott, and Michelle put on. Hope you all have a wonderful New Year's. We will be back with Rhonda on Friday's episode for our review of the Drury Inn at Disney Springs, as well as Summer House on the Lake at Disney Springs. And we've got a whole lot coming in 2024. Thank you all so much.